Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to what is part 3 of a To Be Astronomer reacting to a probably geocentric movie. We've stopped at 1624 at this mark, and with a phenomenal facial expression of this person right here, so let's get back into it.
On the Tychonic geocentric system, the sun is traveling around the Earth literally and carrying the planets with it. So the sun is making the ecliptic, it's not the Earth.
Tycho hired a young assistant named Johannes Kepler in 1600. Kepler, working on his own development of the Copernican system, needed...
I love how you can see that the thing I mentioned earlier here is the bronze nose of Tycho Brahe here. You can see it, the nose here is actually a different color. I like this detail. Let's continue.
Tycho's observations, but Tycho refused to part with them. When Tycho died suddenly and mysteriously in 1601, Kepler took charge.
I don't like what they're implying here. Suddenly and mysteriously, almost as if Johannes Kepler had killed him. Ah, well, no. I mean that's that's wishful thinking for them at best. It's like, oh no, Kepler couldn't let the secret come out, so he killed him. That's a bit much, I believe, but whatever.
Charge of Tycho's observations and used them to develop his own system.
Kepler's... Indeed he did. Kepler, as I mentioned, I believe in an earlier part, was more of a real he wanted to get behind things. He wanted to derive laws of why things move the way that they do, and from that we get Kepler's laws, the three. And Tycho Brahe wasn't really much of a explainer. He made observations mostly. I mentioned that earlier, but I'm just saying it again because it's relevant right now.
Great insight was that the sun must be playing a significant role in the motion of the planets. They are following very definite paths. We know that for sure. How on earth do they do it? And what moves them? So he said the sun must be somehow causing them to go round. So he postulated that the sun is rotating and had sort of spokes which somehow got weaker as you were further from the sun.
In Kepler,
I don't know what he means by the sun is rotating. I mean, the sun itself has a rotation around its own axis, but this has nothing to do with the orbits around it. Of course, the thing that the important thing that Kepler came up with is that he realized that through a Copernican view of the solar system, the sun would be more or less in the center, and that the other planets would be in ellipses around it, conical sections of an ellipse, really. So that was the big thing that Kepler came up with, amongst other things, of course.
System. The sun is in the center, while the planets move on ellipses, non-uniformly.
Exactly. That was a big shock at the time, because stupidly, in my opinion, early on, they were like, oh no, everything has to move perfectly because, the gods have created it and it has to be perfect. And by perfect, they mean in circles, because circles were perceived as perfect, kind of artificially perceived as perfect. And that the fact that things seem to be moving in ellipses now was kind of a big upset at the time.
The ellipse, with its two foci, allows us to see that Ptolemy's epicycles and equant were actually a brilliant attempt to express non-uniform motion centuries before Kepler. Indeed, once the concept of non-uniform motion is introduced, all of these systems can be shown to be geometrically identical.
Very much so. If we isolate our view to the solar system, and you can have all of these four views that they have here be equally correct. You have the one of Kepler here with its ellipses, which is of course in a more refined form, but like in the general idea is the same as we have today. And there's Ptolemy with his epicycles, which were supposed to explain it's circles moving around circles and things like that. So if you stack enough circles, you get something that more or less looks like an ellipse a bit. This was one of the ways in which Ptolemy tried to explain the backwards motion of Mars, for example. the Copernican worldview was the same as Kepler's, just not with ellipses, but rather with cycles and cycles. Oh, sorry, I mean circles. Jesus, with circles, of course. And then there's Brahe's worldview, which in which the Earth was still at the center, but he had ellipses and everything was moving around the sun except for the Earth, which held a special position, so it was in the center, really.
It was Kepler's idea that the sun must somehow be moving the planets in their orbits that set the stage for Isaac Newton's great breakthroughs. But
I mean, not totally wrong. I don't like the wording here, though, that the sun moves them. That the sun, how do I put it? That the sun doesn't move them. I mean, of course, the sun plays a significant role, or the most significant role in the solar system on planetary motion. But it's the idea should rather be that somehow the sun seems to be the central object, like the thing around literally everything revolves around, if you will.
Observational tools equal to the task would first have to be developed.
Now, it's good old Galileo was the first person in the modern age who made this clear. He made the distinction between what I think it's Locke, then the philosopher Locke, described as primary qualities and secondary qualities. The primary qualities are the shapes of objects and the way they move and the space in which they move.
Philosophers' view on primary properties of anything have no bearing within the realms of science. A body has no primary qualities. A body has qualities. Full stop. That's it. No primary there. That's meaningless. Why would something else not be a primary quality? Yeah, don't like it.
Galileo employed the telescope to establish that Jupiter was itself orbited by moons. This contradicted Ptolemy's idea that all bodies orbited the Earth, and was seen as proof that the Earth must likewise orbit a much larger body.
I mean, not really proof, but like strong evidence in this direction. The other things that I'd like to explain a bit about Galileo here. The things that are important about Galileo is that with the I do apologize. Something opened. Yeah. So the thing with Galileo is that, amongst other things, he did discover the Galilean moons around Jupiter. That is, of course, completely correct. And as they say here, this was the first observation of something revolving, maybe not around like Earth. That was a big thing. That other things could have orbits around other planetary bodies. That was a big thing. But there were way more than that. They cut him short here, because that's the only one that seems important to them. One of the things they cut short, for example, were Galileo's discovery that Venus has phases, for example. That was a big thing. That means that Venus is a solid, really. It's not as perceived earlier as star. Also, he discovered that some of the planets, I believe it was Venus and Mars, are not appearing like point sources anymore, like other stars. They were appearing like disks. They were in his telescope. They looked like a 2D, disk, really. And then he combined this with the phases and concluded that they have to be at least roughly round. Then he observed the moon closely and saw that there were hills and valleys on the moon, like really sticking out, and all this kind of stuff. All of that was new. He within very few observations, he found out so many important things, because really he came up with not he, but I think it was a not Danish, a Dutch guy, I think, who came up with a telescope, and Galileo got one from him. There were tremendous findings he had with just a few observations, really important.
The sun. For the first time, observational science claimed to have established an error in the Church's understanding of Scripture. And the first great battle between faith and science was joined.
The criticism has been made back in Galileo's time that it was the Church that was controlling knowledge, only allowing people to think within certain boundaries.
Science and theology were wed together. They were one basic entity. Theology always had a supremacy over science.
After years of house arrest, but seemingly quite sincerely nonetheless, Galileo eventually recanted.
A year before Galileo died, he rejected the heliocentric or Copernican universe that he...
It was not 1 year before he died. According to the things I've read, it was like 3 years before that. So it seems odd that they would lie. I mean, not lie, but you know, not tell the truth about that. However, why? You know, the thing about that is really, if you put someone under house arrest for at that time over half a decade, right? And he couldn't get any books out really. That was the big thing, and what I and what quite a few astronomers now believe is that what Galileo wanted to do is to say, oh no, you were right, I recant, as they say in this movie, the Copernican principle, but let me publish some of my writings, because in there any observant reader will see that the Copernican worldview is really the only thing that makes sense. That was his general plan, we figure today. Also, even if he did recant, right? Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's say Galileo did indeed recant from the Copernican worldview. That's not really important for today's standards, is it? It may have been important in the 1600s, but certainly not today.
He had defended for about 30 years. A friend of his named Francesco Rinuccini came to him because he thought he had evidence from this astronomer named Giovanni Perioni to prove that the Earth was moving. And so they brought this evidence to Galileo, and Galileo said, well, there's no way I'm going to accept this. And it was a very long letter that he wrote, explaining the theology, the science, and everything he needed to explain that Perioni couldn't have found proof that the Earth was moving. Rinuccini...
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I haven't heard about this story. It may be true, it may not. The thing about that one is though that again, in the letters, they read his letters. It's not like Galileo was free to write whatever he wanted. He was under house arrest. People were actively reading his correspondence. So of course in a letter he would deny it. That makes sense.
Rinuccini got the letter, and as soon as he got it and read it, he erased Galileo's signature off the letter because he didn't want anybody to know that Galileo had finally repented of his heliocentric views.
However, when Giordano...
That sounds like conspiracy a bit again, but you know, whatever.
Bruno's ideas were similarly condemned, Bruno resisted to the bitter end.
Giordano Bruno got burnt at the stake the year 1600 for writing about an infinite space.
He was burned alive in the streets of Rome in the year 1600 for simply saying that there are other worlds out there, that there's nothing essentially special about our world. So why would the Catholic Church burn this person alive in the streets of Rome? Because think about it. If there are other worlds, then the question is, are there people on these other planets? If so, do they have a savior? If so, do they have a pope? If so, how many saints do they have? Imagine 1 billion popes, 1 trillion saints. How many trinities are there? The mind goes crazy contemplating a universe of universes. And so what did the church do? They simply burned him alive.
That may be true again. I haven't heard about this burning. Let's say that was the thing that happened. I think it's curious that the only thing that this movie mentions, that, well, it has theological implications, as if that's the biggest of the problems. I mean, it sets the general tone for the movie rather well, I'm afraid. But yeah, if there were, of course, for religion, this would be a huge problem. If there was alien life and we would find it and see that it looks very different to humans, for example. Well, what's the sentence that humans are made in God's image that you can find in some holy books? It would be obviously ridiculous. No, well, not the humans are made, but like intelligent life, kind of. There obviously is something else going on that, for example, the Korah, the Bible didn't mention, which, you know, it's just not a pretty thing for most religions if we found alien life. With that said, my timer informs me that it's been over 15 minutes again. Thank you very much for watching. Do the usual YouTube things if you would be so kind, and forgive me for my voice today. I have a bit of a cold right now. So yeah, let's wait until part 4, eh? Alright, thank you, bye.